An official update just dropped on Gradey Dick as Darko Rajaković came out and revealed some insights on the current situations going with Gradey Dick as well as Brandon Ingram. And with the latest emergence of Jakob Poeltl, there's been a lot of discourse about Gradey Dick. So we'll dive into all of that as well as Masai Ujiri making what looks to be the final move of the Toronto Raptors current season. So lots of stuff to break down out here in this video. But one thing I want to bring up, folks, and I've been through this and the Raptors aren't playing well. It's March. There's not a lot of new people tuning into Raptors coverage, but we've been sort of hovering around this 37,200 mark for the last little while. So if you guys have been tuning into the videos, want to stay up to date with all the latest news, because frankly, this offseason will certainly be exciting for this Toronto Raptors team with the young guys, the draft picks, all that sort of stuff. We will be covering it all here on Raptors Digest, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. But let's dive into the news, as we have a lot of stuff to break down. The first thing we're going to discuss is the Toronto Raptors making a move, what looks to be the final move of the regular season, as this team, of course, has been trying to find diamonds in the rough, trying to develop interesting pieces to see who could actually be rotation guys to the Toronto Raptors next year. And frankly, a lot of the second-round picks, a lot of the young guys, a lot of the people that we brought in last year's NBA draft or around last year's NBA draft have been really, really effective in the back half of the season. And frankly, Masai Ujiri's also found a few guys out there on the free agent market in 10-day contracts that have been effective as well. AJ Lawson's an example. A few of these dudes have frankly been very, very good for this Raptors team. And one guy that has actually impressed some people is Cole Swider, who impressed the front office enough to give him another 10-day contract. It expired over the weekend. A couple of these reports are coming late. They dropped the weekend, getting a chance to cover them now. But basically, Cole Swider has signed another 10-day contract, and Blake Murphy revealed that Swider's deal is just for the rest of the season. No 2025-2026 option for now. The Raptors do have flexibility to renegotiate and add an extra year before the final day of the season. They could prefer to do that with a Lawson conversion instead, or just ride it out as is. Now, we've seen the Toronto Raptors, we've seen Masai Ujiri, we've seen these guys do this stuff fairly consistently over the last little while, where in the back half of these years, the team is, of course, tanking. There's lots of opportunities, so we're capturing a flag for young guys to get minutes, to get out there on the basketball court, and then Masai brings them in and says, hey, we'll give you a little option. We'll give you a little contract for the upcoming season. We saw it with Yuta Watanabe, who ended up staying with the team for a little bit of a while. We saw it with Freddie Gillespie, who didn't end up staying with the team for a very, very long time. And that's kind of what has been the case for some of these dudes in the back half of the roster. Now, what's the case with Cole Swider? Because he has been a fairly interesting piece since coming to the Toronto Raptors. Basically, in his stretch of games with the team, he's put up some interesting numbers. He's put up some interesting statistics. Nothing too off the wall, but he's able to knock down three-point shots, shooting 31% from the three-point line. Again, he was very, very effective from behind the three-point arc in the G League. And coming in as a 10-day contract type of player, over the last stretch of games, has been very, very solid. I think he's exceeded expectations for what the Raptors were looking for a 10-day contract. And even though, he's with the South Bay Lakers, so he has that relationship down there, definitely a guy that I think could be very, very interesting to keep in the Toronto Raptors system. Of course, we'll see how things actually end up shaking out, as if Masai Ujiri's deciding between some of these back-end rotation players who's going to have a shot to get into the team next season, I think AJ Lawson is going to be the player that has impressed the Toronto Raptors the most. He's already been integrated into the system. I think he is that guy that the Toronto Raptors will move forward with. But of course, these are decisions that you can make until the last day of the season, or of course you can make some moves out there in the offseason and sign in free agency and do these different things. So that's all stuff that's fairly interesting to bring up. But of course, we do have another update in regards to official Gradey Dick injury update. We do have one in regards to Brandon Ingram, as well as these two guys have been dealing with injuries, and now with the Toronto Raptors having a solid cushion, there's still a chance that the Spurs end up tying us to the final game of the season in terms of overtaking the final odds, and that is what it is. The Raptors have a few games left, and a lot of Raptors fans are hoping, hey, maybe this team, if we come out and the losses don't affect the tank, we could throw out Brandon Ingram, we throw out Gradey Dick, we could throw out the full contingent, the full lineup, and just see how it looks. So we have some momentum, some excitement going into next year. But we did get an update in regards to the status of Gradey Dick, and at least the full contingent, it will not be happening. As Josh Lumber came out and said, the Raptors are shutting Gradey Dick down for the rest of the season. He's been out for a month with a knee injury, and he is still recovering. He'll finish his sophomore season with averages of 14 points per game, 41% shooting, 35% from the three-point line, down from basically 54%, from 37% last season in 54 games, and he was on the Rising All-Stars game. So that was that's Gradey Dick's season in a nutshell. To give it a full stat line in terms of what he's been able to provide, 3.6 rebounds as well. I think his rebounding got slightly underrated over the course of the season. The three-point percentages this year, there were more people focused in on him, and especially after the start of the season where he was absolutely trailblazing hot. That man was on fire for the first month of the season. There's a lot more emphasis, a lot more focus on Gradey Dick, and of course, that takes some adjustment period. Of course, you would like to see Gradey Dick be able to knock down more of those corner three-point shots and everything like that, but one of the most interesting pieces of discourse developments for this Raptors team regards to Gradey Dick, I just flashed a picture of him, is Jakob Poeltl, who of course plays a very similar position to Gradey Dick, is the current rookie for the Toronto Raptors here. And while the stats of course still lean in Gradey Dick's favor, in totality over the course of the season, Gradey Dick got more minutes, got more opportunities. I need to add minutes per game to this graphic, cooking up a bunch of these things here now into the future. But Jakob Poeltl over the course of this year had averaged 8.6 points per game, 3.1 rebounds, shooting 35% from the field, and 35% from the three-point line, and 35% out there on corner threes. So a guy that some people are very, very encouraged by. And if you're comparing the ages, he's a year younger than Gradey Dick, and some people are looking. I've seen some discourse, our comment section, I've seen on Twitter, I've seen a lot of different places saying Jakob Poeltl may have eclipsed Gradey Dick, especially if RJ Barrett gets traded. Maybe Jakob Poeltl is the shooting guard of the future. Now, I think it is way, way, way too early to actually have these discussions, to have this discourse in terms of who you like better. I think the Raptors need to focus on full-out development of Gradey Dick, of Jakob Poeltl, of all these young guys here now at this point, and let it play out. Because, Walter's games, and you see the back half of the season because he has been more impressive as of late. That is the reality of what's going on. The back half of the season, you could see his points per game ended up increasing fairly significantly from what the total averages were, 11 points per game, per night, and then shooting 41%. And this is all games since January 31st. So once the Raptors really moved into this direction, I guess they've been in this direction the entire season. But, what's those numbers? 11 points per game on 41% three-point shooting. That is very, very solid numbers there for Jakob Poeltl. I think there's still, even though there's still lots of development room to grow for Gradey Dick out there on the defensive end, I think he's playing with a little bit more intensity on that end of the floor, even though Jakob Poeltl, I think, has a little bit more of a, set defensive frame out there on the basketball court. So those are all things to factor in. We also had an update in regards to Brandon Ingram's injury status, as Brandon Ingram will hopefully progress to full contact and full practice next week, but they're running out of time for the season. So he hasn't been completely ruled out for the end of the season here now at this point, but Blake Murphy is revealing that, while he's progressing to full contact, it's very short on time in terms of Brandon Ingram actually getting out there on the basketball court for the Toronto Raptors. So that's the reality. That's what we're dealing with here now in terms of the injury situations. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section down below. You guys best thing is far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.